Welcome to the Be More Connected podcast, a space where healers, artists, and entrepreneurs cultivate the courage, creativity, and community to make their boldest visions a reality. I'm your host, Elise Preston, business coach, community builder, and human design guide. Here, we explore the intersection between creativity, spirituality, and conscious business, helping you grow your vision with courage, devotion, and care. Take a deep breath. You're exactly where you're meant to be. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so grateful that you're here for the second episode of the Crossing the Threshold series, a series that's devoted to exploring who you're becoming as you move through seasons of change in your life and business. And this can be relevant to any seasons and cycles in your life and business. But as I'm recording this, we're talking about the threshold, the transition between 2025 and 2026. And today we are talking about how to listen, how to truly, truly listen for what's next for us after a season of shedding and release. And in last week's episode, we explored how 2024 and 2025 have both been such intense years for so many of us. Personally and collectively, there's been so much upheaval and trauma and transformation. And many of us were asked, and in some cases forced, to let go of old identities, outdated roles, and versions of ourselves that could no longer support where we're going. And after this kind of shedding season, something really interesting often happens. As the dust settles and as you suddenly start to feel like you have space to make new choices again, you can choose to stay in what's familiar, to maintain, to coast, or even maybe repeat things that you've done in the past. Or you can answer that inner quiet call that's inviting you to grow and that's inviting you towards something new. And in this episode, we are going to dive deeper into that, how to listen, how to trust, and how to actually follow the invitations that are arriving for us in our life after a season of shedding. So when I speak about listening, I don't mean listening to the noise of the outside world. We're not talking about listening to trends or algorithms or the opinions of strangers on the internet. When I say listening, what I'm speaking about is listening holistically, listening to your inner world and also your outer environment as sources of guidance. And in both vision casting and here on the podcast, I love to be able to use a simple framework for listening across 4 different channels of our lived experience, tuning into our mind, body, soul, and community. And when reflecting on what's coming up related to the dimension of our mind, you can reflect on what are the ideas that keep returning to you? What do you dream about or want to geek out on? And are there any visions that feel like they're persistently arising in your mind's eye? When we consider this dimension of the body, you can think about, where does your body seem to expand or brighten? What activities energize you? Like, what do you notice you have more energy in your body after interacting with or engaging with? And where do I notice tension or resistance coming up in my body? When we are listening to the whispers of the soul, questions that you can explore might sound something like, what feels like the truest expression of who I am? And what feels like it allows me to access the deeper, wiser, more persistent and eternal aspects of myself. And when reflecting and connecting with this dimension of community, you might ask yourself, who do I love being around? Who feels nourishing for me to be in the presence of? And who do I notice feels really nourished by my being and my authentic presence? And what communities and events and places and spaces allow me to be able to be more of my just free, unfiltered self? So, as you are listening and attuning across these four different dimensions, mind, body, soul, and community, you are going to get some really great downloads and really great insight about where you are being guided to direct your attention and energy next. The things that light you up and excite you at a deep core level are not a fluke and they're not a coincidence. That is your body and your soul communicating with you about what is correct for you. And listening to and following that guidance is how your energy and your creativity and your power expands, and how you get to follow the spiritual breadcrumbs towards making your deepest desires a reality. However, we live in a culture that makes inner listening incredibly difficult. The world is so loud, the world is so overstimulating, and things are set up in such a distracting way that even when we're not actively consuming content, we still find ourselves with Instagram trending audio playing in our heads, looping like background noise. And this kind of overstimulation creates disconnection, and it makes it more difficult to attune to our mind, our body, and our soul. And that static and that background noise often drowns out the quieter voices and the whispers of our intuition and our higher self and our soul and our inner guidance. And I've been thinking a lot actually about my own relationship with social media recently. And I've been feeling a pull to take a few months off of social media in 2026, which I think I want to talk about in another episode on this series. But even now, I notice how the constant flow of content and feeling like there's so many different platforms that I need to interact with and respond to people through, it's disrupting my ability to be present and to be able to hear myself. And for me, I know that a deep part of my own creative process and my relationship with myself, it requires a lot of rest and downtime and alone time. And for all of us, our intuition requires spaciousness, and insight requires opportunities for stillness. And being able to connect with our guidance requires presence. And so it's so important for all of us to be creating space, be creating room in our lives so that we can more clearly hear what's next for us, especially now during this threshold time when we're wanting to get clear on our next steps. And something that can sometimes feel unfamiliar or unpracticed is actually giving yourself the opportunity and the permission to listen in these self-honoring ways and allow your decisions to be guided from the insights that you receive that are nourishing and affirming and come from this place of self-advocacy. Because for so many of us, we've grown up within a culture that's conditioned us to believe that we should suppress our aliveness, that we should suppress our desires in service of others' needs or wants or expectations, or in service of fitting into particular boxes related to success or performance or belonging. And so sometimes it can take us a bit of time to really recalibrate, to make decisions from this different place. But I would love to really give you all a challenge. And this is going to be part of your next level nudge at the end of this episode to have some kind of individual practice, but also inviting in maybe some accountability with a friend or a loved one around how you can really do some deeper listening, especially in this threshold time between now and the start of the new year. So, in addition to considering those different dimensions of your experience, mind, body, soul, and community that you can tap into for a starting place around your deeper listening, I wanted to also offer another way to consider and think about how our intuition communicates to us. And so, through the lens of intuition and psychic development, there are many ways that it's said that our intuitive messages can be received and come through us. And we all have different aspects of our being that might be more heightened or more sensitive. And we might have different ways that our intuition seeks to communicate through us. And these are often described as the seven clairs. And so most folks are familiar with clairvoyance. This is considered to be the form of clear seeing, seeing clear visions in our mind's eye. But there are also 6 other ways that our intuition can communicate with us. There's claircognizance, also referred to as clear knowing, that you will just have an intuitive knowing drop in, something that feels direct and true. Clairaudience, which is clear hearing, being able to maybe hear a specific message, or sometimes it can even come through in the form of lyrics of songs or mantras. Clairsentience, which is clear feeling. And so you might receive tingling sensation or warmth or coolness or a way that your body is responding and reacting as a way to communicate with you. Clairgustance, which is clear taste. So you might have a taste arise in your mouth that is wanting to signal or kind of cue to you some memory or insight or piece of information. Clairolfaction, which is clear smelling. And so, again, similar to that clairgustance, there might be a smell that enters your senses that's meant to help to connect you to a memory or an insight or an idea. And so we all have different natural strengths and intuitive senses that might be stronger within us. And so for me, my strongest intuitive channels are clairsentience, which is that clear feeling, and claircognizance, clear knowing. And I usually feel things strongest first. And yeah, there's this deep connection between feeling something and then deeply knowing it for me, even if I don't have a clear logical explanation as to why. And many of us, most of us, were raised to distrust our intuition and distrust these subtle ways that our internal signals are seeking to communicate with us. And we've been taught to prioritize logic and to value proof over inner knowing. And oftentimes, even to look for permission or affirmation from others as a source of insight or direction. And the problem with that is that the advice of others, while it can sometimes be helpful, it oftentimes pulls us away from our deeper truth. And also, focusing so heavily on logic is also challenging because our minds are the most heavily programmed and conditioned parts of ourselves. And they often prevent us from being able to really listen to and hear the deeper guidance that comes from our body and our soul. That's often more effective and more true for us. So, true intuitive guidance often arises not from external output or needing to make pro cons lists or overly logicize things, but actually really noticing what your body and your soul, or even what your community is reflecting back to you. As I reflect on my process recently, it's really been during my morning meditation, my journaling, and my walks when intuitive messages have been coming through. So recently, the messages that I've been receiving have been surprisingly simple and also pretty repetitive. They've been landing like these soft but consistent reminders. And my intuitive messages have really been centered around simplifying. I've been receiving that word, simplify, 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 and also been receiving messages about being more transparent about my process, being generous with my wisdom, and also this message of like, be the artist, make art. And what's so interesting is because clairsentience is my strongest sense and my strongest kind of intuitive channel, even as I'm repeating these messages back to you now, I'm starting to feel a little tingling sensation on my arms, which I often affectionately refer to as my truth bumps, which really help to affirm for me when I'm on the right track. And so these intuitive messages have been especially helpful for me as I've been returning to podcasting and also diving deeper into art making. Because when I first decided that I wanted to relaunch my podcast this fall, I'll be honest, I was initially really in a perfectionistic place about it and also trying to overcomplicate everything. I initially wanted to have a video podcast. I wanted to have the episodes be 45 to 60 minutes long. I wanted to create new podcast artwork and find new music for the show. And I did end up investing some time and energy into trying to make some new podcast art on Canva and just like searching through different royalty free music sites for new theme music. But what was so interesting was the more time and energy that I spent on those activities, I was just noticing myself feeling more drained and also feeling like I was getting further away from the desired vibe and aesthetic for the podcast. And that intuitive message around simplicity started just speaking to me more loudly. And when I really allowed myself and just gave myself permission to lean into what would be most simple, I realized that I actually don't need new podcast artwork and I don't need new podcast music. I already have music and podcast art from the first time that I launched my podcast, and I really liked it. And so I decided that I just wanted to add an updated picture of myself to the podcast album art and call it a day. Just acknowledging that I can always update this image and update the music later, but I don't have to let those things be a barrier to restarting the podcast. That I can totally start with what I have and get the podcast going again. And when I gave myself permission to do that, I was like, oh, this actually looks great. It feels great. It sounds great. I remember I did spend a lot of time kind of searching through some music archives to find this track originally, and I still really love it and it still really works. So, really giving myself permission to trust those intuitive reminders and those intuitive nudges invited so much more ease into my process. And it really supported me with taking action from more of a clear and grounded place rather than spitting out and continuing to invest time and energy in overthinking and overfunctioning. We live inside a dominant culture that benefits when we are overfunctioning, overwhelmed, exhausted, and distracted. And most of the time, to no fault of our own, we're hustling and operating in survival mode. And when that is our state for most of the hours of our day, we don't have much time or energy to question things or to dream boldly or to challenge these systems that we live within. And throughout this series, I want to offer some different ways for you to be able to do the opposite of what dominant culture would prefer for you to do, and to find ways to slow down, to get present, and to make space to listen. Because what's next for you is already whispering to you, and you don't need to force yourself in any way to be able to access that wisdom. You really just need to make space to hear it. For this episode's next level nudge, I want to encourage you to tune in to the intelligence that's already inside your body and in your life that's guiding you towards your next level of growth. Really listening to your inner world and your outer world as if they're in deep conversation with you, because they always are. Your life is always giving you feedback. Your body is always signaling things to you, and your soul is always whispering. Additionally, your community is always reflecting something interesting back to you. And for those of you who are building businesses from a place of purpose and creativity, this kind of deep listening isn't a luxury. It really gets to be part of your strategy, and it's how you can make aligned decisions and how you can create work that actually feels unique and authentic to you. So, to help you tap into what your next level of growth and what your next season of business is asking you to step into, I want to revisit the questions that I posed towards the beginning of this episode and invite you to journal or reflect on the following questions across these 4 different dimensions of your being. Connecting first with your mind, asking yourself, what ideas won't leave you alone? What visions keep circling back, asking you to take them seriously? And asking, what are the things that you daydream about or the topics that you feel like you could talk about forever? When connecting with the body, reflecting on where your energy naturally rises and expands, where you feel a spark of energy or openness. And on the flip side of the coin, what makes your shoulders tighten or your stomach drop? That is important information for you to tune into as well. Knowing that your body is so powerful and so honest, and it often has a lot of wisdom that you might not even consciously be able to connect with yet from the space of your mind. Next is the soul. And here you get to reflect on what feels like the truest expression of who you're becoming, and what desires feel wise and deeply rooted, like they're coming from a core place within you beyond logic. And finally, there's community. Who are the people that feel most nourishing to be around? Who do you love being in connection with and supporting? And where do you feel inspired and recognized and most like yourself? So these 4 channels, mind, body, soul, and community, all work together, and they help to show you what's ready to grow, what's ready to be released, and what you're gently being guided to step into next. And when you begin listening in this way, you can actually let go of certain ways that you might feel like you're trying to chase or force clarity, and create more of this openness and opportunity to receive it. And if you're ready to take this process of listening deeper and to really dream and visualize and map what's next for you, vision casting is the place where we can do that work together. If you're feeling like you're ready to embrace a bigger vision for yourself and your business in 2026, I'd love to invite you into vision casting. This January, we'll gather for a month-long journey to dream and design your business year ahead through intuitive planning, creative strategy, and aligned action. Together, we will cast our 2026 visions, let our body lead the way, and weave soul and strategy into our powerful plans. So by the end of our 4 weeks together, you'll have a clear, embodied roadmap for the year ahead, one that you will genuinely feel excited about bringing to life. If you're interested in joining vision casting or learning more, you can check out the link in my show notes or visit elisepreston.com. And I wanted to let you know that early bird pricing is available through December 1st, and the program will be beginning on January 13th. So excited to have this opportunity to connect and vision and dream together. Thank you so much for joining me. If today's conversation spoke to you, please share it with a friend who's also walking this creative and spiritual path, or leave a quick review to help others find their way here. You can explore all upcoming offerings at elisepreston.com and connect with me on Instagram at @IamElisePreston. Until next time, trust your timing, honor your process, and remember, you are so much more connected than you think.